Good evening. It is for me a joy to come to the end of these 3 days of renewal of reflections upon our faith, and also to have the honor to be in the midst of this Eucharist, and the greatest honor that we have as Catholics to be part of this miracle of the Eucharist. And I thank Father for trusting me with his congregation. When I hear a gospel like the one of today, I always think about how radical it is to really go for God. And we all think about that when we hear it, because it's Jesus speaking. It wasn't just somebody else, it was God talking to us. And the apostles were stunned. Everybody was surprised to hear such a radical statement and what he's asking from us. And we have to remember that today, to speak black and white, as they call it, to speak the truth, the naked truth, is almost offensive. People are intimidated and they find it hard, and they find it sometimes uncharitable. And sometimes people believe that we shouldn't speak like that. But if you read the gospel the way it's written, and you hear it the way it's written, like we just heard it, then we know that it is a fact that God speaks to us black and white. And if we are to preach the gospel, and if we are to proclaim the word of the Lord, we have to proclaim it black and white. We cannot negotiate. We couldn't just dress it up and bring all kinds of cover-ups to the truth in order to make it softer. Because we human beings, we have a tendency not to do the things that we are not pushed to do. It's like if they give you a little reason why you shouldn't do something, you wouldn't do it. And that's why everything the Lord teaches us is black and white, is radical. We either belong to God or we belong to the devil, and there is no middle ground. And I think the gospel of today teaches us exactly these facts, that we are not to negotiate the truth. And the world is trying to teach us that we are able to negotiate, that is not that serious, is not that severe. God is merciful and he forgives us and he understands us. We are human, we are weak, and that is the most common talk, the most common philosophy. And the truth is that the Lord knows us, he created us, he knows everything about us, he knows how weak we are. But he came to give us the strength, the wisdom, the power to obey him and to overcome our weaknesses, our darkness, our lack of love and charity, and the lack of understanding that we have naturally of what is supernatural, which is the gift of the Spirit. We are not able to understand why is it so radical. It's like the apostles were good people, they were good men, and they were not understanding what happened with this young man of the gospel. That was an obedient Jew. He was following the law, he was obeying the commandments, but he was not able to do the last thing the Lord asked from him. That was to give everything up, give it to the poor and follow him. He was not able to do that. And the apostles were surprised because they at a given moment thought this is too much. And then the Lord says the answer that we have to hear, because this is the most important part. He says, what is impossible for man is possible for God. So if we think that we are not able to do something that God is asking from us, we have to remember that it's him asking us to do it. Therefore, he's going to make it possible. So if God asks me to be perfect and holy, it's because I'm able to do it with him. And therefore, if I trust in him and I abandon my life in the hands of him, I'm going to be able to do it. When you read the precious gift of divine mercy, in Saint Faustina Kowalska's diary, and you read the story about the revelations of Jesus to Saint Faustina, which are for all of us, because the Church has embraced Saint Faustina's experience as a true experience, and it's something that we are to embrace too, because it's like a message that God gave us that is so fresh for our times. And one of the messages of divine mercy that is the most powerful of all is the message of trusting in Jesus. Jesus, I trust in you, because that is what we lack in the most. You see, we are people of God, and we come to God and we ask from God so many things that we need, and we have in our hearts so much that we cannot even explain. This life is a mystery, and we carry that mystery in us. And when we come to God, we know He is the one that understands this mystery. But the thing that we have to have between God and us is trust. And that's what we lack in the most. Because if we will trust in God, we will be free, we will be joyful, and we will be peaceful. Because trusting in God means He is under control, and He knows it all. He's going to do it. He's going to do it the perfect way. So if I belong to Him, if I obey God, and I trust in His love, then He is going to be in control of my life. But then my duty in relationship with my trust is to understand that this temporary life may appear absolutely the opposite of what I expect it to be, and it will turn very absurd when I looked at it closely. You see, most things that you see in this earthly life are contradictory. You do not understand them because they are absurd. But in the midst of all of this, God is under perfect control. So one of the greatest challenges we have as Catholics is the first commandment, and that is the least studied of all. The first commandment is our biggest challenge, because if you understand what it means to love your God, your Lord, above all things, that means above yourself too, above your understanding, above your reasoning, above everything, we should love Him. And therefore, if we understand that commandment, we will be free, because the first commandment is the truth, is the fullness of the truth. In order to have the idea of how to live within the rest of the 9 commandments, we have to have the first commandment defined in our heart. And the first commandment tells us that even though we do not understand a thing about what's going on in this earthly life, God knows. So if He knows, it should suffice us. That's why when St. Paul asked Jesus to heal him from that thorn in his flesh, the only answer he got was, "My grace suffices you." That's all you need. Grace suffices. And we have to embrace that grace. And what do we do? As good soldiers, we go to the front lines of the battle of this spiritual warfare that we live in as human beings or as people of God. And we go there with the confidence that our Supreme Commander is in the front with us, and He is on control. And the last thing we are to do is to be afraid of losing our life. Because this life that we're going to lose is just a temporary one. And that's why when Jesus asked the young men of the gospel to give everything up, he was leading him to take that quantum leap, to take that leap that he needed to take in order to go into the spiritual abyss of God, where you jump in it, you dive in it, and you know that He is going to be there for you, and that everything is going to be fine. We have to understand that going for God is going for the unknown, the unexplainable. It's something that we cannot fathom. It's something that we cannot explain to ourselves in any particular way, because it is invisible, it's undescribable, it's not feasible. And those things make us really weary. We are scared to go for what we cannot see. And faith is about that. But when we question ourselves closely as to how much faith we really have, then our faith should be measured in the amount of trust we have in God. Because depending on the amount of trust we have in God, that's how big our faith is. If I am troubled, if I'm confused, if I'm insecure, if I'm fearful, if I'm depressed, it's because I'm not trusting in the Lord, and therefore I have no faith. We have to understand that God comes to us and shows us every little way for us to be with Him. And the first thing He asked when He spoke to Thomas, and when He appeared to the apostles after He resurrected the second time, He appeared to the apostles, and Thomas was there. Remember that He said to him, "Blessed is he who believes without seeing." And the question that we have is, are we really trusting in God? Are we really believing in everything God has revealed to us? Because if we do, we are free. And we are not supposed to be concerned about anything else anymore, because He is on the control. Because if we understand the gospel the way it's written, we are free. We are free completely. We are not to be concerned about anything else but to be obedient. And to be obedient is to follow the path of faith, the path of God written in the scriptures. We have a doctrine, a church that teaches us every single step of the way. For a lot of people, a lot of Christianities of today, all these modern Christianities after the Reformation, our church is very demanding, strict, and it has too many conditions. And it's obvious because the world today is looking for an unconditional way of not doing things. You see, we are to find an easy way to live with God. That's what the world is trying to teach us. But God has revealed to us a way of following Him that is not exactly an easy way. And that's why people don't embrace it the way it is. They negotiate it, they change it around, and they design their own religions, their own ways of believing and following Jesus. But there is only one way to follow Him, and it is the way He taught us. And the way He taught us is a very disciplined, strict, and radical way. No way to negotiate it. You never see in the gospel any passage where Jesus gathered the apostles to congratulate them. You never see that. It wasn't because He was an unjust master. It was because He was a perfect master. Every time around, when the apostles will do something and will not do it all the way, He will turn around and say, "Man of little faith." You see, always. He will not gather them around and say, "Peter, John, James, you guys are great. Let's get together and party because you've done it wonderfully. You are marvelous." He never said that. And think about this. It's not because He was unjust. It's because He kept the apostles on their toes. And He showed them that we were pilgrims. We are in transit. This is a very little moment in eternity. Life on earth is an instant in eternity, an instant. And in this very little instant, millions of souls are wasted because they get trapped here. They fall for this. And I tell you, this is the most precious gift we could ever have, to be alive here. God gave us this gift. It's the most magnificent gift. But in order to understand how great this gift is, we have to realize that it goes on after we die. After this body dies, it goes on. And that is the greatness of the gift. Because if we understand our mortality, we will understand our immortality. And that's why people don't want to deal with immortality, because they are too concerned about mortality. So they are too afraid of dying, they are too in love with temporary life, they are too attached to this transitory state, and therefore they don't want to deal with the eternal sense of being, because that is something that is so far beyond, so out of reach, that I don't want to even touch it. And that's why my soul is weak. That's why I am undernourished spiritually, and I don't have the strength to be spiritual. Because to be spiritual, you actually have to believe. To be spiritual, you have to have faith. To be spiritual, you have to trust in God. That is the only way to be spiritual. Because it's very easy to be religious. How easy it is. The Pharisees were the most religious people. You see, it's easy to turn your life in a religious way, in a religious fashion. You will fool yourself thinking you're holy just by the practices of a religion. But that is not what is going to take you to heaven. Religion alone is not going to save you. It's like the law by itself is not going to save anybody. You could come to Mass every Sunday, go to confession once in a while, do an act of charity here and there, and do what the young, rich man of the gospel did, the one we just read today, and do that. But that's not going to save you, because you had to do much more than that. You had to go beyond the law. You have to actually live according to the Spirit. And living according to the Spirit is living according to the trust in God. Unconditional trust. Meaning trials, toils, tribulations are our gift, are a gift. When you read the Apostle St. James' letter, in the first chapter, he speaks about we should be thankful to God when trials, toils, and tribulations come along. Because it is a great opportunity to strengthen ourselves spiritually and to go above natural life. When natural life becomes a mess and things are upside down and things don't make sense, that's the greatest chance we have to become very spiritual. The fact is that a lot of people come into a conversion, radical conversions, when they are down, when they are sick, when they go through a bankruptcy, through a divorce, when something radical in their lives happen, all of a sudden people come into conversions. Sometimes they don't last too long, but sometimes they stay. But that doesn't mean that the only way to be faithful to God and to trust in God and to follow God is to have something horrible happen to you. That's not true, because God is telling us every day and teaching us every day how to be spiritual and how to trust in Him just by obeying Him without having to go through the most horrifying times in life. But every opportunity we have to reflect upon our faith is a treasure, because that is the only thing that is going to be left at the moment of dying. When we die and we come out of this body, our soul is going to be standing right there, and it's going to be depending on the love that you gave, the love that was in your heart, because that is the only life that you have, that love. But if you only love yourself and you were only concerned about this transitory life, and all you had in you were your worries and concerns about your hopes and dreams of this temporary life, that's all you are. There's nothing left of you that will lead you any further than that. That's how far you walked. That's how far you grew. And that's how much you are. It's like that's what you became. And it's sad to see so many souls parting this earth, and they are not done yet. They didn't make it into the spiritual world in the fullness of it, and they are stuck because they are weak, undernourished. They don't have the light, the strength, the health to go into the light. So to trust in God, to understand His love and compassion and mercy and forgiveness is our most important aim. We have to learn how to trust in the Lord, because if God is asking from us what He's asking for us today in the gospel, that means that is what we need to do. We need to do that. And you know, some people wonder, in the gospel it says, sell everything or give everything to the poor. And you might ask yourself, does it mean I have to sell my house, all my properties, everything I have, and give it away? And we have to understand, each one of us, we have been entrusted with a responsibility in life. Some of us have a family and children, and we need a home, and we need to work, and we need to survive, and all of those things are important for our ministry, what has been entrusted to us. So you're not going to go and give away the house where your children live. You're not going to go and give away the roof that God gave you to put on top of your head, and you're not going to give away the money you have for your savings, for your life. No, we have to be responsible for what God gave us. But what He's asking to give away is that possession of the things that we own. Because you see, if I have a car, and that car is an instrument of transportation, that means that car takes me from point A to point B. And I use that car for transportation. That is the reason I have an automobile. That car is an instrument of my survival. It's an instrument I use. But if I have a car, and the car I have is just a luxury for me to shine, is something to present to people, to impress people, to make me more important and distinguished among people, then that car possesses me. I do not use that car as an instrument. That car uses me. And that is the difference between using material things for our service and letting material things use us. So a lot of people are slaves of material things. And a lot of people use material things for their own benefit, because it's necessary for their survival. And there is a confusion between those two things. Because when God asks us to give it up, to give it away, when He asks us to let go of the attachments we have to our loved ones, He doesn't mean that we have to leave them and walk away from them. He's asking us not to possess them, to let them be part of God. We are to love them unconditionally. We are not to possess them. That's the difference between possessing and being part of it in one body, because we are not to possess anything. And that is the secret of being free. We are not able to be free at the end of this life if we are attached to this life. So therefore today we have to learn how to let go of self and how to let go of this world. Because if you die today and you don't know this well, you're going to be here. You're not going to be able to take off. Where are you going to go when you are attached to this? You're going to be lingering here, as so many souls are. And the Lord wants us to understand this mystery. We have to let go. We have to learn how to be free and let God. Because if we don't let go and let God, then we are going to be stuck. And this is not what the Lord wants us to end up like. Today, if we look at our lives, we could ask ourselves one very important question. If I die today, will I rise into the light? Will I just go towards the light? Will I let this world go? Will I be free to let go of everything of this world if I die today? If I'm not prepared to let go of everything today, then I'm not prepared to die, and therefore I'm thinking that I'm going to die when I'm ready to die, which is not possible, because we are to die when God wants us to die, and we don't know when that is going to happen. That could happen today. So when is it that you need to be ready to let go of everything? It is today. We have to learn how to do it. So if your biggest treasure in this life is the attachments you have to your loved ones, to your money, to your dreams and hopes, to all of these things, then you are in trouble, because you're not going to make it out of here. You're going to be stuck here until you let it go. And to let it go when you don't have the flesh is not an easy thing to do. If it is difficult now, believe me, it's going to be 1,000 times more difficult when we don't have a body. And that's why souls in purgatory suffer so much, because there's nothing they can do about it. And it's very difficult. But the Lord is so merciful that He keeps on teaching us. And He keeps on giving us the most simple lesson. But you know what we want to hear? We want to hear sophisticated theology. We want to hear sophisticated sermons, sophisticated preaching. We don't want to hear that very simple gospel, the gospel that says, change, convert, otherwise you are in trouble. That is the simple gospel. Become holy. You are to be holy, because otherwise you're not going to make it. And the ground for all of this lays on trust. We have to trust in God. It's when you have a marriage and husband and wife do not trust each other, there is no love between them. And there's nothing working. Nothing works for them. Everything is wrong because they don't trust each other. So if we do not trust God, we have a bad relationship with God. And to have a bad relationship with God is not a good thing. Everything goes wrong. Everything goes wrong now and later. So today, it's like God is knocking our hearts and saying, wake up and be very simple. Understand the simple truths of this life. Very simple ones. We live a very sophisticated life. A life that is filled with information. And we have become very intelligent. We have become very astute. We have become really fast. But I tell you, that doesn't show that is making us holier. That wisdom that we have, that human knowledge that we have, that astuteness, that intelligence that is so developed that we have, is not necessarily shining in sainthood, in sanctity. No, it's not shining like that. So we have to rewind. We have to come back, and we have to review our lives and to understand that it is more simple. It is very plain. It's black and white. In order to be of God, you have to be a very basic human being. You have to come down to nothing, to very little. And that is what the love of God is all about. For God, you see, God is the perfect lover. The perfect lover is the one that wakes up before the other one and fixes everything up. And then when the other wakes up, finds everything in place. So perfectly in place that it's not even noticeable that somebody else did it. Takes it for granted. That's God. When we wake up in the morning, God doesn't show up and says, hey, I gave you one more day. You go into your closet to dress up. I gave you clothes. You eating. I gave you food. He never shows up. He never says a word, but He gives us everything. So perfect love is unconditional giving. That's why, when does a marriage last? When they give each other unconditionally. Someone wakes up before the other, fixes everything up, and is not going after the partner saying, you see, I left the coffee there and you didn't even thank me. You never recognize what I do. You never appreciate the things I do. That is conditional loving, and that is the most natural way of loving, because that is human love. But God is asking us to love supernaturally, meaning giving unconditionally. So giving unconditionally means trusting unconditionally, because we could only give unconditionally when we trust unconditionally. So I trust in God in spite of it all. I don't understand a thing. Why are children dying, starving? Why are children overeating? Why are people that are so evil making it in the world and nothing seems to stop them? Why are so many good people going wrong in everything they do? Why? And we have so many questions. But that is not the view. The vision we should have of life is not about why. It's about God is under control. And this is not easy to do, because most of us are so stubborn and so proudful. We want to know why, and that's what kills us. So the only way we could ever trust in God is if we stop asking why. It's the only way, because then we become humble and obedient, and we don't question God. Imagine, St. Paul says that everything that happened to the people of God in the Exodus, when they went through the desert into the promised land. Everything that happened to them is a warning for us. And one day, over 20,000 people died because they tempted God. They tempted God. And you know, today, millions of us are tempting God. And you know why we are not annihilated by the wrath of God? Because of Jesus. Because He is our priest. And He is the one that mediates between us and the wrath of the Father. Otherwise, we would have been burnt a long time ago if it wouldn't be because of the Eucharist. Before Jesus, they were burnt by the thousands when they did something like that to God. And today we have this forgiveness, this mercy and compassion that came through Jesus Christ, our redemptive path. So, to end, I will say, we are here today. We might not be here tomorrow. And if we are here today, we should be thankful to God for giving us an opportunity to reflect deeply into our faith and to realize who we are, who we really are. And the best way to do it is thinking, what if I die today? Is the best way. You see, if you read the life of the saints, if you read the life of most of the doctors of the church, you're going to find that most of them, the greatest exercise they had spiritually was to give God every day their lives as if it was the last day. And they were living every day as if it was the last one. Because it is the only way we can walk with God in obedience. If you fall too comfortable here, if you feel too attached to this, and you don't think for any minute that today could be your last day, you are walking on the wrong path. Because then you forgot that God owns this life, not you. And you have no clue when you're going to go. So you might be here for another 50 years, you might be here for another 10, 5, but you might not be here for one more day. And this is very important. Why do I say this so much? Because my experience of God is that a lot of people, millions of people, are caught by surprise at the end of this life. And they are not prepared. And there's nothing you can do. Nothing at all. There is no reverse. You can't come back. So you're gone. And there's nothing you can do to mend this life. Now is the time. Because today, if you just go through a true act of contrition today, and you do a true reflection of yourself today, things that you take today into your heart might be the most important things for the rest of eternity. Because you might take decisions today that will affect your whole existence. Because if you accept deep in your heart the real truths that have been revealed to you, and you take decisions deep in your heart as to those truths that have been revealed to you, that automatically changes you into another human being. Because we are made of decisions. Decisions make us. We have to take decisions. It's like the saint told us. He says, God that created you without you is not going to be able to save you without you. And we know we have to take decisions. I have to decide if I want to be saved. I have to decide if I want to go to heaven. I have to decide if I want to be prepared for my dying, for my death. If I want to be prepared to love and forgive. I have to decide all of that. It's my decision. It's not God's decision. We have to do it. And then we have to do it for real. And when you do that, remember, God created everything with His Word. You see, the Word is important. We have to say it. We have to tell it. And that is what is going to change and that's what is going to make a difference in our life. Those transcendental, radical decisions. Because otherwise, we're going to keep on living a superficial life. We're going to be miserable human beings. And at the end of this life, we're going to be so scared and so confused because we don't know how to face death. And we don't know what's going to happen when we die. And that's going to be a very scary moment. You see, the most amazing relief in your life will be if you walk out of here and you know that even if a bus runs you over, you're going to be okay, because you are prepared, because you are walking with God. So it doesn't matter what's going to happen to you. Nobody's going to scare you about how you're going to die, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference, because you're ready. You are prepared. You are of God. But imagine how scary it is to be living a life that is not in obedience with God, and that you don't have any reflection about your eternal sense of being. That must be a very scary way of living life, thinking that this is it. This is all you have. And then in order to keep this under control and to keep it protected, I come to church. Because if I come to church, God blesses my family, my economy, my health, and I'm protected from thieves and evil. And that's all I want. But I'm not thinking any further than that. And that will be a very scary religion. So let's ask the Lord to anoint us with a true reflection upon this sense of living eternally. That way we are free, and we are no longer simple mortals. We are going to become true children of God that will never, never die. And that is our real task, to become immortal now, not later. Amen.